Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Today is November 9th, 2025.
2025. Wow.
And November 9th is a special day that I'm just learning about. It began in 2001, 2 months after the World Trade Center was brought down. And it was created by President George W. Bush, and it's called World Freedom Day. And if you're wondering why it was November 9th, it was really named in honor of the Berlin Wall coming down, being brought down by popular demand. And that was November 9th, 1989. And so that's why he chose that day for World Freedom Day.
Wow.
So it was it's an interesting concept and interesting time, although I'm just learning about it, this World Freedom Day. And I have a particular affinity to it because I was in Germany. I lived in Germany 3 years, and in 1967, I went to Berlin. And it's interesting. The city of Berlin was in East Germany at the time. And so we had to take a special train in there and whatnot because we weren't allowed in East Germany. And my husband was military at the time, and we were with a group of military people. So, what was so interesting was the difference between West Berlin and East Berlin, divided by this gate, they called it, but it was a wall, a huge wall, and they protected it vehemently. And we went through by bus, all of us on bus. They put mirrors under our bus. They came onto the bus. I'm talking about the East German Polizei or police, and they checked all of our passports, looked at us several times, and our pictures. It was really very scary. And what I most noticed, I think what we went to one place, a museum, which was fabulous, with all the stolen Nazi things from Egypt and other places. But it was the only thing that was fabulous because there were no cars on the street, there were no people on the street. It was like a dead city compared to West Berlin, which was
Thriving.
vibrant, thriving. Um, what do we call our type of government? You know, um,
Democratic, yeah.
democratic government. It was just amazing, and to see the difference. But the wall was a very scary place, and they protected it vehemently, and shot people who would try to climb over it. Uh, and in my article that I'm sharing about this World Freedom Day, they said it was because the people were tired of the division and the separateness. And that may be partially true, but that's not what I experienced talking to my West German neighbors and friends and seeing East Berlin. And what I saw was it was a revolution because of economics. They had no jobs, they had no income, and they didn't have much income. They might have government jobs, but their lifestyle was very low compared to West Germany. And that's what they wanted. They wanted the lifestyle that West Germany had. And that's why they would try to escape and go over the wall, and did. And many of them were killed doing so. But the point is that it was largely done piece by piece by the people. They would try to take little pieces out of the wall. And what really brought it to a head was when Ronald Reagan went to visit um, Mikhail, I think it was Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev. And he had already started a big improvement and a change in the government in
And
Russia.
economic that changed there too.
Yes, and it was actually Nancy Reagan who urged Ronald Reagan to tell Gorbachev, and he did. He said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." And it was shortly after that he did on November 9th,
What
1989.
I think is for me interesting is that it didn't fall, it was torn down. It was difficult to build and it was difficult to tear down, and it took
Mhm.
time. And the way you tear down a wall is one brick at a time. And I think very often as we begin to tear down anything that interferes with freedom, we have to do it one brick at a time. And it looks like
Nothing's happening.
we're not doing anything. And why that's important to me is that I think freedom does not happen as a declaration. Freedom happens after we make that declaration and we begin the action that follows it. And the action is difficult because it's never more than a brick at a time. And I think that's really important right now in our time, where we're dealing with many things that are in conflict with freedom and with well-being and with health. And so building our country, building our freedom, finding our freedom still is at one brick at a time. And I think that's difficult because I think when we don't see the whole wall come down, we think we're not doing anything, or we think there's nothing that can be done. And I am sure that for some time that wall looked like it was going to be permanent.
It certainly did. It certainly did. And so it was quite a shift in consciousness as well. And actually, then the division between East and West Germany was terminated shortly after that. It was united as one German, and that happened 28 years after the end of the war. So if that's the right number that I'm looking at, I think
November 9th, 1989.
No, when
okay,
Germany
yeah,
was united. Um, but something that we need to look at too for ourselves is um, spiritually. How do we look at our own freedom? How do we find making peace in our world? And so, what often robs us of our peace in our world is our own emotional and historical traumas and upsets. We need to look at our fear, our resentments, our old wounds, our beliefs that tell us that we're separate and alone. That's our inner work for finding peace in our world. None of those are acceptable for your well-being.
One brick at a time.
One brick at a time.
I know that when I meditate at night, I meditate when I go to bed and I meditate in the morning before I get up. And when I meditate at night, very often, in order to be able to meditate, I don't have to, but I choose to go through a gratitude list. And the reason that I do that is because often what stands in front of me are the things that are wrong in the world,
challenges.
things that I believe are wrong out there, and things that I believe are wrong in here. And it is so easy to focus on either one of those and to feel helpless or hopeless. And so when I go through my gratitude list, I'm positioning myself to be able to do my meditation. And I think of my meditation as one of many bricks. It is one of many steps. And if you think about it, you meditate for 20 minutes and you stop and you wonder what will happen as a result of this. And the truth is a lot will happen, but it'll be as subtle as the 20 minutes you spend.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful way to go to sleep.
It is.
Gratitude for the
And
day.
it's a wonderful way not to have a sleepless night or to have nightmares. That you start your night and start your day. I start my day with the the same thing. I'm grateful for. First off, at this point in my life, I'm grateful to have awakened. That I'm still here.
Hey, I'm still here.
And that I can feel my toes. I can feel my fingers. I think I'm here. And then I need to say, oh, I got to get up, or I get to get up. I get to go to work rather than I got to go to work. I get to have a life rather than I got to have a life. And that one word alone changes it from something that is being done to us to something that we get to do. And so freedom is something we get to do. We get to declare it every day in every way. I know when I get to work, one of the things I do is I greet everyone that I see. And I greet everyone that I see, whether I know them well or I don't know them well, as a friend, as a person that I care about. And the other day I got to work and I just felt out of sorts. I hadn't slept very well, and I didn't do my normal greeting. And I didn't realize I wasn't doing my normal greeting until I was being greeted by everyone that I normally greet with the same warmth that I normally share with them.
Oh, how nice.
And then I sat down to do my charting, which is I do my record keeping from the day before the next morning, because that's when I have access to the computer. And I'm sitting at the computer after having been greeted by a lot of people who I normally greet. And one of the psych techs brings in breakfast for me and sits down breakfast and just smiles and says, "Here's breakfast." And he just does that every now. And what I thought about, this is a person who was in the cafeteria area where we have our meals, who thought about me enough to serve a plate for me, and then brought it to me. I thought, wow, these little things that we do, they feed us. These little things we do, they nurture us. We need to remember that even when we don't remember, there's a current behind our activity. There's a wake behind the ship that we're sailing, that when we lose the energy, it will push us for a while. And it didn't take very long before I was back in a state of gratitude and appreciation for the people that care, that I care about, but I forget sometimes to care. So if you've been forgetting to care on occasion, it's not too late. You can care. And if you think that you're not doing enough, you're not. There's never enough that can be done. But what you're doing is enough, in the sense that every day that you commit to doing something for freedom, you change it. You change the world. Now, I want to also shift gears, because we can talk about freedom for a long time, but we're moving into Veterans Day tomorrow. And
Mhm.
Veterans Day is a day where we don't I don't think we celebrate as much. I don't celebrate. I was a part of all of that in the 70s. But we'll recognize the sacrifices that people made. We recognize the people that said yes to being on the front line of the most difficult situations one can encounter, where their own life is at stake. And in a kind of way, we're celebrating, I think, Veterans Day again, with all of us being on the front line. And we really are on the front line right now of needing to help our society, to help our culture, to help our world have the freedom that years ago, and in many different wars, we were fighting for.
Indeed. Yeah, that's such a double-edged sword for me
Yeah,
about Veterans Day, because I wish we didn't have to have veterans,
yeah,
and at the same time, I so honor them with their sacrifice, because they really put country and God and country first over their own lives. So while I appreciate them, I wish we didn't have to have them.
yeah,
And I think we're coming to that. And not that wars are stopping, certainly, but that soldiers on the front line, at least with our country and the way we're doing war, there are fewer of them on the front
yeah.
line. Um,
Well, the real casualty in this is freedom. The real
right.
casualty is freedom at every level. We were having dinner the other night with some folks who live in our condo, and one of them is a veteran, and he was talking about walking point. If you don't know what that means, it means you're in the jungle with people who are aiming their rifles at you, who want to kill you, and you're the one leading the group, which
In
means
point, like a
in
bee.
point, and which means you're the first target they see. And he's walking point, thinking that this may be the last time he gets to walk anywhere. And he's doing it partly out of his commitment to the world and for freedom. And he's doing it partly because somebody told him to, and that he didn't have a choice. And isn't that how freedom is? And on the one hand,
Mm.
we have a certain amount of mobility, we can take a certain amount of action, but there's a certain amount of action going on behind the scenes that we don't have any control of. And that's really scary. And so being a person who values freedom is a scary place to be, because things don't always go the way you want them, or that you think they should go. Things don't always go well. And of course, that's what Veterans Day is about, is recognizing how many people things didn't go well in the process of trying to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. Um, I have a quote by Ernest Holmes
Yeah, this is a good quote.
that I want to share. Um, he says, "The latent divinity within us stirs our imagination, and because of its insistent demand, impels and compels our growth. It is back of every invention. It proclaims itself through every creative endeavor, and will, when permitted, create a new world in which war, poverty, sickness, and famine will have disappeared." That's Ernest Holmes and the practical application of the science of mind. So it's an interesting thing. We want to honor those who have given their lives in service of the country, and yet our ultimate goal is to have no war,
Yeah.
have no wars, and that was definitely Ernest Holmes' belief. Um, there is a word about this inner urging to create the good in the world, and the revealing word is a Sanskrit word, which is the oldest language that we know of in the world from India, and it's called Svatantriya. Svatantriya, and the first part, Sva, means self, and the Tantra is expansion, self expansion. So Svatantriya denotes not simply personal autonomy, but the innate creative freedom of consciousness itself, the power by which the divine expresses and liberates.
Which is exactly what Ernest Holmes was talking about, and what Ernest
Well,
Holmes,
that's what he said.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what he taught,
That's what he taught.
and what we do, and that you are your thoughts, you are the consciousness, and that consciousness is expressed in everything that you do. So when we pay attention to our consciousness, we pay attention to the freedom we want to see more of. When we give our intention to freedom, then freedom becomes something that's available for everyone. I recognized that the other day when I was on I-95, and a person uh, wanted to get over in the lane in front of me, and there wasn't enough room. And I had a choice to allow that person in by slowing down or by speeding up a little bit to let him know I was in charge and I wasn't letting anybody in. And how often have we done that? And I flashed my lights and slowed down a little bit, and the person entered the lane. And then just as quickly as they entered the lane, they cut in front of another person in the next lane. And I watched them do this again and again and again, and totally indifferent. And I thought, should I have done that? And I had to ask myself that a couple of times before I concluded, what else should you have done? And how many times are we kind or do something that supports freedom only to find that it wasn't appreciated or wasn't noticed, or that nothing changed because of it, but something changed for us. And when it changes for us, it changes the world. We are the point of change. We are the power to change the world, one one lane of cars at a time.
My father did not participate in World War II because he was working in an essential economy, which was creating
Fuel.
fuel, gasoline, and that was needed in the war. So I didn't grow up with military in my family, but my first husband was a pilot in Vietnam and was over there for a good while. And it's just a totally different mindset, you know. And we were very supportive of the Vietnam War at that time. It was early in the war, not later in the war, and yet in hindsight now he looks back and sees it all as a ridiculous war, and not when he was there, not when he was flying, um, and he did have some close calls, but thank goodness came back. But it's something that we need to have, and yet I wish we didn't have to have it, because the losses are so great and so personal. So it's an interesting thing. We want to honor our veterans. We want to honor our freedom, and we want to honor our own selves and our personal freedom, because this teaching is so powerful. You can change your mind and change your life, by thinking affirmatively, by thinking positively, and knowing that you can experience freedom, you can experience joy. And it's a lot of what you focus on, because when you know that what you're focusing on is what you're creating more of, it's easier to be positive. And so it's easy to be a critic, but often you're just anticipating more bad in your life, which is not helpful because you are creating more of that in your life.
In the movie The Hunt for Red October, which is a Russian submarine that is going to be turned over to the United States, but the United States doesn't know it. And in the room where they're deciding what to do with this submarine that is operating separate from all the others, and the first thing is, should we blow it up? Should we destroy it? And there's a great deal of time and effort spent trying to figure out whether to ask the question, does it want to become a part of freedom, or should we just destroy it? And I think, and I paid attention to that, and I thought in my own life how many times it's easier to think, just get rid of it, uh, put it away, lock it up, as opposed to maybe there's another way. And what's involved in the movie, of course, is the danger of making the wrong decision. But that danger cuts both ways. When we decide that people don't deserve freedom, when we decide we don't deserve freedom, it may feel safer in the beginning, but it's dangerous.
It's got repercussions.
It's got repercussions, and the repercussions of not moving in the direction of freedom are just as disastrous as combat. It's a kind of combat. And so, I think in a kind of way, we're in an internal war with encouraging the most positive outcome versus erring on the side of, well, I made sure that nothing bad happened. I nipped it in the bud. I attacked it before it could attack me. We often have that kind of mentality. And I was talking to someone before we got started who is working at creating a community where she talked about the divine uh, the divine feminine. And, and not much occurred to me in thinking, but when she said that, what occurred to me was the divine feminine is a great deal more patient and a great deal more inquiring than the powerful masculine. The I will put it down before we do anything else. And it's just interesting how we need that blend. We need that mix of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. How are we doing? 10:52. We're moving right along. I saw this. This is an aside. If you ever get a chance to watch this on YouTube, there's a very large dog on the other side of a glass door, and he's just standing there looking at this Chihuahua.
But what kind of dog is he?
I don't. He could have been a German Shepherd. He could have been.
No, he looked like a big
Yeah,
pit
like
bull.
or a Newfoundland or something like that. The world's
He was
biggest
big.
dog, looking down at this Chihuahua on the other side of the glass, just barking and clawing at the screen. And if that door weren't open, I would just rip you apart. And so here we have a dog operating out of fear, not the fear of the dog, but the fear of his own smallness.
But but the big dog on the other side was also showing his teeth and
Yeah,
snarl.
and so they opened the door, and the dog who's snarling on the other side stops snarling, and the Chihuahua just sort of,
Turned around.
oh, he turns around very slowly, and then looks back, and the kid is like, oh, oh my goodness. It's Sunday, I can't say shit. Oh my goodness, this is really, whoa.
But
And it's just,
they both quit threatening.
yeah,
It was so funny with the door open where they could.
yeah, when we tear down that wall, it just changes everything.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's
so
very
I think it's up to us to tear down the wall. And as soon as we do that, and I think that's the biggest problem with the internet, is the internet provides us a wall where we can attack anything in the most vehement, nasty way and feel safe. And as soon as that door opens, like, oh my goodness, maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe I need to approach it with a little more kindness. And so I think we need to be watchful of how many times we're acting because we feel safe to be rude and inconsiderate and thoughtless, when in fact, if we were face to face, we wouldn't do that. And I think we need to be face to face with our own fears. And as we do that, we become free.
So I think it's time for our screen share.
I think it is too.
And we want to take this opportunity to invite your support, Oh,
which we really need. For those of you that don't know, we do have expenses. This is a not-for-profit, and we understand how far that goes. A not-for-profit organization, and our ministry is something that if you support it, it allows us to help support the community we live in, not just the people who are a part of it. There's ways to donate, and the ways to donate are on the site. You can see that. And I know we do this every week, and we do it with the same folks. So probably we don't need to. We probably don't need to do it, but if we don't do it, I think people forget that we need to be supported. So
so we say an affirmation that we believe as we give, so do we receive.
really, and think about it. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that as you give, you receive? And if you do, then support your own self too. And as you support us, you're supporting yourself.
Support what grows you.
Yeah, absolutely. So
So we say together, and we invite you to say with us,
my
my
investment
investment
today
today
is
is
made
made with a
with the
full
full realization
realization that God
God
is the
is the source
source of
of
my
my
supply
supply
and
and
returns
returns
it
it
to
to
me,
me
enriched and
and multiplied.
multiplied. As the Bible says, that comes right from the Bible. And when it says enriched and flowing over, they were paid in grain, and so that's what that's referring to.